Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you so much for joining us today. I'm Ana Maria Argilagos, and I'm the president of Hispanics in Philanthropy, and I'm so excited to be here with you all to discuss this important new guide, which HIP had the great pleasure to co-author with our partners at Connecting Communities in the Americas at CFLeads. You're all here, so you all understand and know that Latino communities are an undeniable power, where we're one of the fastest growing populations in the United States, yet we remain underrepresented, especially in many community foundations across the country. So we're here today to address that issue. This guide came to life because CFLeads and specifically Lisa Shala, our good friend there, understood that there was a gap in how community foundations were engaging with Latinos in their communities. So I'm just so pleased for this partnership. It's been a long time coming. I've been going to these meetings for a long time and thrilled to see it happening today. But Lisa and others understand that Latinos are not a monolith. I mean, if you didn't recognize that, you recognize that after last week's election. We just saw our communities diverse in our identities and our national origins and our experience, and also in the ways that we give back to communities. So now more than ever, we really need to understand how to meaningfully connect and build relationships with the Latino community. At HIP, we've always believed that. We believe in the power of the collective impact of our diverse voices. And so we're super proud to be able to partner with CFLeads on this important work. Over the next hour, you're going to have the chance to hear from many of our friends, a lot of Latina leaders who were featured in this guide and who will share their insights, their experience, and advice on how community foundations can become more inclusive and more equitable. So I encourage you all to be active in the chat, to approach this conversation with openness. And we all are here because we have a willingness to learn. We know that partnerships take time, and the rewards are huge if we are able to do this. So please also stay connected to HIP, Hispanics in Philanthropy. Go onto our website, sign up to become members, to receive our newsletters. The website is hipfunds.org. We're going to be in Albuquerque, New Mexico next June for our conference. It's our first conference in the Midwest in many, many, many years. So if you're wherever you are, please come. It's going to be international. We'll have over 1,000 people there. And with that, I will kick it off to our moderators, Lisa and Inaru and Mary, to kick things off. So thank you very much for joining.
Thank you. Mary, go ahead, please.
Sure. So thank you. And Anna Marie, thank you for your opening remarks. And I also want to thank you for having us here to just share a few words of welcome. Want to thank you for the incredible work that you do all over the world, but more specifically in Latin America and in the US. CFLeads, I'm here as president and CEO of CFLeads. I've had the privilege of being here for almost 2 years now. And CFLeads is the nation's network of community foundations who are committed to community leadership. We're very clear about our mission. We try not to have mission drift. We're all about helping community foundations unleash their full power and potential beyond that of just being a grant maker. Certainly a grant maker is important, but the work we do in place-based communities, serving as catalysts, serving as conveners, initiative managers, and all of the ways that communities need leadership is what community leadership is all about. And in fact, we have a group over in Charlotte, North Carolina today focused on economic mobility and how do we lift up everyone's opportunity and aspirations to lead a healthy and productive life. One of the first programs that I was introduced to when I joined CFLeads was Connecting Communities across, in the Americas, I should say. This is an initiative of CFLeads, and Lisa Shala, of course, does a fabulous job leading this work, and I've had the privilege to observe up close, primarily when I went to Bogota and certainly have spent some time with some of the grantees and partners that work with CFLeads and through the Connecting Communities in America. And we are really very impressed with the work that is going on and the exchange of ideas and strategies that really move communities forward. So again, thank you for allowing me to just share a few words with you. I will say this to you. Our bold vision for the future is to get 250 community foundations on the leadership ladder and to move 125 up the ladder and ultimately collective impact. We believe that community foundations are some of the most powerful vehicles for change in communities that really have an appetite to be more than just a fiscal manager, but folks who really want to see transformation in terms of engaging residents, working across the three sectors, advancing public policy, and just doing all that we have been called to do in terms of community transformation. So again, thank you for allowing me a few moments just to share a little bit about CFLeads. If you want to learn more, please visit our website at www.cfleads.org. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mary. And so I'm Lisa Shala, Director of Connecting Communities in the Americas. It's really been a privilege to work hand in hand with CFLeads and to join that vision for community foundations in the United States to really come out and be leaders and conveners in conversations. And so, yeah, one thing that we saw is that there's a disconnect with the Latine community and community foundations. And this brought us to a conversation with Hispanics in Philanthropy, with many of your colleagues there who I appreciate so much, on how we can work together to bring out this message to community foundations, but really in a very practical way. So this guide is based on 19 conversations, interviews with Latina, Latino, Latine leaders across the country. It's their words, not ours. And we wanted to hear what they have to say about community foundations, about engagement, but meaningful engagement, like what does partnership look like? In their words. And so we're thrilled that you're here with us today. We've invited 4 of the leaders that we had the opportunity to interview with. And so I'll pass on the conversation to Inaru, who will introduce them.
Wepa, hi everyone. I'm Inaru Dari Melendez Vasquez, based in the Washington, D.C. area, she, her pronouns. And I just want to say I'm so grateful for both Mary and Ana Mari to have joined and opened up. I think it's such a privilege to have folks who lead our organization come in and just say a few words about this guide and just this project in general. It's been over a year. I don't know if Lisa mentioned that we've been working on this, and we purposely chose Hispanic Heritage Month to open up, right? Sort of and a call to our communities to look at how to have deeper connections. And we're also fortunate to have amazing panelists with us here today from all across the country. Thank you. We are deeply grateful for your time and your wisdom in joining the conversation today. So I have the privilege of introducing them. First, we have Carlos Martínez from the Latino Community Foundation of Colorado. Carlos is deeply committed to uplifting Latino voices and fostering sustainable change across the state. And then joining us from Pennsylvania is Cindy Milian from the Berks County Community Foundation. Her work strengthens our communities in the Berks County, focusing on inclusion and representation. And then from California, we have Óscar Chávez of the Community Foundation of Sonoma County. Óscar champions equity in Sonoma County, addressing some of the challenges that Latino populations have there through collaborative solutions. And then finally, but not least, we have Carla Molina from the Community Chair of the Hispanic Impact Fund at the Austin Community Foundation. Carla's work is dedicated to advancing economic and educational opportunities for communities in Austin. Again, thank you, and we're excited to hear from each of you today. And with that, I think I'll kick it off with my first question. And if I missed anything in the introduction, please feel free to fill in. I know it was very brief, but it's because we want to focus on the actual guide and the conversation. So if each of you could tell me, why did you decide to participate in this project? And ladies first, we'll start with Cindy. Yeah, we can just kick it off.
Well, hello, and thank you so much for inviting me to participate in this project and in this panel. Really, I, as a relatively new person in the philanthropic space, one of the first things I started doing when I started this position was to actively seek out and introducing myself to organizations. And what I realized is, even though our organization has been really good about having Latin representation on staff and on our board, when I went to spaces where there was other organizations or spaces where decisions were being made, I didn't see many other people that looked like me. And that's really why I wanted to be part of this project.
I'm on mute. My bad, y'all. We'll go to Carla. If you could just answer, why did you decide to participate in this project?
Honestly, anything that we do in support of our Hispanic Latino community, to me, is something it's my passion work. I've been doing it as part of both my day job and my night job, if you will, for 25 years now. And so it's, to me, I'm always passionate about moving our community forward, making sure that we are thoughtful about how we engage the community and how we represent the community. And so, to me, this was a no-brainer.
And I'll go over to Carlos.
Thank you. I decided to participate because I thought it would be an opportunity for me to impart kind of like my 35 years working in the nonprofit and the foundation world of my lived experiences, both positive and challenging, that I've had. I've worked in private foundations, United Ways, community foundations, and through all this time, really working in the Latino community also. And so I think, seeing how community foundations work with nonprofits, because I've been, rolled with that, and also then working with community foundations, in that role and working with the Latino community. And so it was an opportunity for me to go ahead and impart some of those lived experiences and share them.
And last but not least, Óscar.
Thank you so much. As Ana Maria said, Latinos and the Latinx community is the fastest growing demographic, and that is certainly the case here in Sonoma County, where now close to 30% of our population is Latinx. Yet when you think about the investments that philanthropy makes to the Latinx community, the community is still sorely underfunded. And as a younger demographic, that is our future workforce. So I think it's just incredibly important that we think about how do we invest in growing and supporting our future workforce, our future leaders. And so to me, it was really a no-brainer to participate and think about how can we encourage other community foundations to think about widening their investment opportunities to really grow a demographic that will be here well into the future, our future leaders, our future workforce. So it was just an incredible and exciting opportunity to be able to participate.
Thank you, Óscar. And you've really presented an excellent segue into the next question, which actually, what is the most important reason or the most important reasons for community foundations to engage in this population? And I appreciate your knowledge of the demographics and really putting it out there that it's, this is our workforce of the future, right? And so putting it in that way, is there anything else you'd like to add on to that? And then I'll ask Carlos the same question.
I mean, I think it's pretty obvious. We are sort of undermining our future communities by not making necessary investments. When I look around in Sonoma County, I see so much potential within our Latino community. Yet I'm seeing fewer opportunities to engage, whether they be in leadership opportunities or a pipeline into higher responsible positions within the nonprofit sector and certainly within philanthropy. I have, as a new leader to the foundation and within our networks, I do see that there is a glaring lack of Latinos within philanthropy. And for me, one of the early observations was that within our philanthropic advising side, there's not a lot of diversity. And so I think, being the president and CEO of the foundation, I'm in a position to raise those issues, not just within my organization, but within the broader community. And not just within philanthropy, but what about our banking institutions? What about our medical institutions, our academic institutions? So I think we have a unique opportunity because we are now diverse people moving into these positions of greater responsibility to be able to elevate these issues and to call into question, why haven't we been successful in growing a pipeline to move a growing demographic into positions of greater responsibility? So one is we want to grow the investments to the community, but we also want to ask important questions about how can we as a community be strategic in the way that we invest to grow our future leaders.
Thank you so much. Carlos, would you like to follow up with your idea about this importance of the connection with the community?
Sure. Kind of like following through with my colleague Óscar had just talked about, community foundations play a critical role in shaping social ideology and opportunity. And I think as we look at the Latino community is, how can community foundations, as my colleague Óscar was saying, be able to go ahead and really push, be able to challenge, be able to go ahead and provide opportunities for the Latino community to be both involved in philanthropy and also be recipients of investments, so that we can go ahead and build the leaderships that we need to be able to go ahead and extend opportunity through our nonprofits that are supported, organizing, engagement. And I think one of the things that community foundations also have, they also hold a lot of power in the community. So, in that power, how can they help to broker power and bring in the Latino community, as my friend Óscar had just said right now, of bringing them into leadership positions, being able to go ahead and how to elevate our presence in communities, not being on the sideline of a fabric, but being part of the fabric of the community. And how do we bring that in to go ahead and be part of the community, as being, a growing percentage of the workforce, being a bigger percentage also of economic vitality in communities. How do we really look at that and be able to provide those opportunities? Because community foundations, aside from making financial investments, can also play a key role on being able to go ahead and look at building up that social fabric of the Latino community and bringing that in with the overall community as well.
Yeah, thank you. I'm thinking a lot about also what our folks in the chat are putting in about just looking at the power and the access that community foundations have in the community. So thank you, Carlos and Óscar, for that input. I wanted to ask Cindy, and I think it goes, I just want to also uplift in the chat, Angela Swan wrote about connecting with you about the size of that community. But can you share like a specific challenge maybe your foundation faced when trying to engage Latina communities and how you overcame it?
So one of the first things that I noticed when going out to the Latino population and meeting with nonprofit organizations was one, they didn't have a clear understanding of what a community foundation was. Like, what do we even do? And I think part of it is where they weren't being engaged. So my goal was I went out and really just asked them to tell me your story. What are the challenges that you see? What are the dreams and hopes that you have? And then I explained what the role of a community foundation is and how we could work together. So really in going out and really taking that time to build those relationships really is a key. You know, I heard somewhere, as a community foundation, if you spend more time in the office than you do in the community, you're not doing it right. So it's really taking that time to go out and engage with leaders, allowing them to tell their stories, and then inviting them to spaces where they can speak, where their voice can be heard, and where they can be part of that decision-making space as well. So for me, it's really looking at being that bridge for our communities, our Latino communities, representation for our leadership, because as a foundation, we have those connections that many other people may not have. So making myself available by first engaging them and then inviting to the spheres of influence that I have access to.
Thank you so much. And I love what you said, Cindy, this whole aspect of community foundations, really putting time into it. And this time is an investment and maybe belongs in our strategic planning, right? That staff will have time, leadership will spend time, and that is part of the investment in the community, as well as the grants or any other things that we're doing. So thank you. So Carla, and then Óscar, what role do you think cultural understanding plays, especially in building trust within the Latine community? This role of, some people call it cultural competence. I like cultural sensitivity or knowledge. Can you tell us a little bit about the importance of that role and how to even build that within a community foundation? Carla, go.
I'll speak as someone who doesn't work at a nonprofit and who or at a community foundation, but I'm the chair of our Hispanic Impact Fund steering committee at my local, the Austin Community Foundation, who does a great job. And I think one of the ways that they do a great job is that our steering committee is really led by Hispanic Latinos, and I think they do such a great job of being data driven, and we as a team really rely on that data, and to Cindy's point, you know, really being out, engaging with the community, understanding what their needs are, even just the work that you all are doing, and engaging various community foundations, you know, me as the chair getting insights. I think that is one very important step. And you know, when it comes to cultural understanding, you're not always going to get it right, and know that there's a lot of, you know, even as we on this call are talking about the Latine community, you know, that may or may not resonate with everyone within the community. I'm hearing a lot of Latino, I hear Hispanic, you know, there's a lot, you know, even the term Latinx can be somewhat polarizing of a term, depending on who you're talking to within the community. So I really think it is about, you know, you can't replace engagement and having conversations and being out in the community. But I also want to take a moment to really stress that when we talk about the growth of the market, it really isn't just about, you know, this community that we are serving. It is about the amount of growth and potential. These are also your funders. When we think about, and sorry, the sun is like coming right at me right now, but when we think about, and you know, in prepping for this, my day job is with Bank of America, and for us, serving the Hispanic Latino community is a business imperative. It is how we think about growing market share. So I had my branding behind me. It felt a little bit too much, so I took it off. I'm sitting here in my office, But I just think it's important for us to understand, this is the fastest growing segment of homeowners, reaching 49.5%, the largest increase across any racial or ethnic group. Latino-owned businesses are the fastest growing sector of the U.S. business economy overall. It is an increase 34% in the past decade. The GDP of Latinos overall as a whole is 3.2 trillion. If we were to our own country, we'd have the 5th largest economy in the world, larger than the UK, larger than France, larger than India. If you take Latinas alone, we've commissioned a report that is $1.3 trillion of GDP, bigger than every other state, bigger than the state of Florida, except for California, Texas, New York. So, again, and Pew Research came out with a study that said Latinos are projected to make up nearly 30% of the U.S. population in 2050 and will account for 60% of our country's growth. So we are the fuel in our country's economic growth. So, I just think when it comes to cultural understanding, there is, yes, engage with the community. How do you understand them as the community you serve? But a big piece of that is also how do you engage them as your funders? These are, this is, like I said, the fuel to our economic growth in this country, and having that understanding is very important as well.
Yes, thank you so much. Óscar, could you add?
Absolutely, and really appreciated what Carla said. I think that if you don't understand the community, you really can't engage the community in a way that can build trust. And Carla brought up a really good point about the purchasing power of Latinos. And when we look at and certainly within our community foundation, our donor base is primarily older and white. Yet when I look at the Latino or Latina business community, they are growing in our community. So that is there is potential there, and we just haven't been able to connect. And so part of having the cultural competence within the community foundation is knowing how to engage a different demographic that has the potential to grow your community foundation. And so that is really a growth opportunity. It's not just about how we serve Latinos, but how we invite Latinos to be donors. And we somehow have this idea of what a donor is or what a donor looks like. And I think we have an opportunity to sort of dismantle that construct. We know that Latinos historically, we're givers. We give in every which way. My parents were very low income farm workers, yet they were givers. They always gave to the community. They always gave people in need. And so we have to recognize that giving doesn't just come in the form of money. It comes in the form of your intellect, of your time, of investing in community. And if you don't have that cultural awareness, you can't invite that richness that is really going to make your community foundation much more stronger. And so I just see tremendous opportunity not only to better engage through cultural competence and competency, but also to open up a whole new world of investors to the community foundation.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that leads perfectly to our next question around misconceptions. And I'm going to ask Carlos this. Obviously, there's like the misconception that Óscar and Carla were speaking to about seeing Latinos as just like the receivers rather than givers. But can you speak to any other misconceptions you might have encountered from community foundations when it comes to engaging Latino communities? And then how do you address that? Like, how do you go about like kind of dismantling that within the community foundation?
Sure, sure. Well, thank you. One of them was that whole piece around givers. And so I'm glad to see that both Carla and Óscar addressed that. But I think that's one of the misconceptions that they have is that, that we don't give back. And, as we look at philanthropy, it's the love of community. And we give our time, talent, and treasure. We give it in different ways, but we've also haven't really been invited to participate in more formal levels. And I think it's, as we're looking at inviting Latinos to come in, it's really looking at what kind of strategies are really aligned with the values of the Latino community. But the other two things that I wanted to talk about also is kind of like, one of them is around relationship building, and misconceptions sometimes that, well, I hear this a lot. We invite, our community leaders to come and nobody really shows up. They're really not interested in the foundation, the community foundation, whether it be nonprofit leaders, community leaders, or people who are business leaders, that they just don't come. And I think one of the things is around relationship building, going back to does culture matter, is that yes, when you're inviting us, not through the way that we're used to be invited, we're probably not going to go ahead and come. Okay. And so it's really about that relationship building, as Cindy's talked about, showing up. It's like, a lot of times we have to go to you. It's like, when do you come to us? We're always having to go to you. And I think sometimes privilege plays into this, because we in community foundations will invite folks, okay, between the hours of 9 to 5, which is a lot of times where our leaders can't go to it, and to go to their places, which sometimes are not very accessible. And it's like, we have to go to you. So I think some of the things around relationships and how we engage and invite people is critical there. And then the third piece also, I think, kind of like this piece about risk taking, and that's more like on the investment side. If we invest in Latino organizations, we need to have more information. We need to vet them more. And Lord forbid we give them a general operating support grant, because they won't know how to go ahead and manage that. And it's kind of like this trust piece around the investments. I think there's a lot of misconceptions around there that we may not know how to manage, but my colleagues just presented about how Latino businesses are growing. That's the same mindset with a lot of our executive directors. They have that entrepreneurial spirit as well. And how do we support that entrepreneurial spirit in the nonprofit sector so that they can go ahead and grow their nonprofits and make sure they're relevant and aligned with the community needs?
Thank you so much, Carlos. For our next question, and we'll start with Cindy on this one and then go to Óscar. A lot of what we heard in the interviews was also about community foundations hiring and keeping on staff, and you've already been talking about getting people from your communities into positions of leadership. What are some of the systemic barriers to that? I mean, is it just about, okay, now we'll go hire somebody who's Latino or Latina and check it off our list. Now we've got it. Now we're going to get connected to the community. What are some of the deeper systemic barriers that you're seeing in this philanthropic space of community foundations?
Well, for me, I look at it like not what are the problems, but how can we fix it? So, and I'm a very get back to the basics kind of person. I think because of my 20 years of working in the community, in child protective services and with other organizations before coming to this space, I think it's important that we get back to the basics, when we're looking at we know what the problems are, but how can we help move forward? And let it begin with me. It means that I need to go out to the community, that I need to ask community leaders what are the problems that they see? How are they working at that problems? And to listen to them, and to let them know that I'm not there to tell them what their problems are or to fix their problems or to tell them what to do, but I'm there to help support and to be a bridge, whether it's, to other community leaders, to government officials, to private businesses that'll be able to give that financial support if I can't give it, but to really be that support to our Latin leadership out in our communities, and to be flexible and creative. I think many times as foundations, we're very set in our ways. And I love how great minds think alike, because everything that y'all have said was like, y'all stole my thunder. That was all of my notes for this question. But being flexible, and you're right, many of our leaders came into their positions because of passion and really just a passion work that they're doing, their life's mission, but have other jobs, have other constraints. So being flexible in when we're meeting with them, where we're going to meet them, what time we're going to meet with them, and actually talking to them how they can be active in the philanthropic space, giving them ideas. You know, I may not have the money to give, but I can give my time, or give ideas. So making sure that we're including them in the conversations and being creative, because they might not be able to physically be at the table, but you can still make sure that their voice is being heard. And then providing them with technical support. You know, a lot of our nonprofits don't have the money for the trainings that they really need. Many people go into those positions because it is a passion, they're passionate about the cause, but they may not have the training to deal with the business accounting side of things or the human resources side of things for their workers. So how can we as foundations support them? You know, can we pay for those trainings? Can we give them access to our space, where they can hold their trainings or host events? So really kind of thinking outside of the box, how we can help them. And then that's when you're going to start seeing some of those barriers being broken down. There's so much amazing work already being done, but how can we elevate the work that's being done, support the work that's being done, and making sure that the community as a whole knows what they're doing, and hopefully opening the doors for more support as well.
Thank you so much. Óscar, would you like to add on to this idea of the role that community foundations can play in helping to break down some of these barriers?
Absolutely. I think part of it is we have to, be a little more humble as organizations and be more inviting and not be seen as these institutions in ivory towers. And so, I think that requires a sort of a different kind of leadership. And I think the best way to remove this systemic barriers is to help our Latine people see themselves in these positions, and to create those opportunities, cast a wide net when you're doing your recruitment. We are the most diverse as an organization since we were founded, more than 40 years ago. I'm very proud of that we've been able to attract incredible talent into our organization. And it's not just, seeking talent on your staff, but seeking talent and working to diversify your boards and other committees within your institution. Until you have critical mass within all of those sectors, things aren't going to change, and those systems are not going to erode fast enough. And so I think being aware, creating the authorizing environment to ask the question, why aren't we attracting more diverse people into the field? As I mentioned earlier, I saw that within our philanthropic advising. And so, we recently had an opportunity to work with our junior college and the College Foundation. They're developing a curriculum for grant making. And so we are investing with the community college and providing a grant so that students could go through the process of assessing grant programs and actually making contributions, real investments into organizations. It's important that they see themselves exercising the act of giving. They are philanthropists, and there's no substitute. You can't teach that in the book. You can learn it, but until you do it, you see the impact of how important that is. The other thing, within our League of California Community Foundations, I think there's only 2 Latinos running organizations, and I had this profound experience. I invited early on a group of young students that wanted to learn about the community foundation, and I was talking to them about the work that we do. And one of the young ladies, she asked me, did you go to school to become a CEO of a community foundation? And I was completely honest with her, and I said, well, no, I didn't go to school to become president. I actually didn't think that I would be able to go to college. You know, I shared my story about being an undocumented immigrant from Mexico who didn't see himself in any kind of leadership role, who didn't see himself being an active member of our community, because as undocumented people, you know, we have to hide and live in the shadows. We can't be full participants. And it was a very vulnerable moment for me to talk about, you know, that experience, because you're taught not to talk about your experiences. And then I got a call from the executive director of that organization. She wanted to tell me that I had such an impression, made such an impression in this young person, that she walked away feeling a great sense of hope that she could do something in her life. And if you don't share those lived experiences, if people can't see themselves in these leadership roles, then we have failed. And so I think the best way to erode the cultural barriers is to just invite and bring in more of that rich diversity that can make us a stronger community.
Thank you so much for sharing that. Like, that made me very emotional, so thank you. And someone in the chat wrote, stories are important to share and inspire. I think that rings true, especially if we can't see ourselves in like big or small ways. Like, we can't even imagine that we can be, you know, we think we have to go to college to be a CEO when that's not necessarily the case. I love that you shared about the importance of, you know, reading a book and having the academic version of the learning journey, but also having that real world experience that allows you to kind of build your career into what you want it to be. So thank you. And I'm going to go over to Carla and to Cindy. So looking ahead, and I just also want to ground us in this moment, a week or so away from the election, and looking at our own communities. And I'm sure there's a lot of folks in our audience who are thinking, like, how do we, you know, where do we go from here? How do we reach out with, and hopefully our guide gives you that first step on how to connect with Latino communities. But what do you envision the next big opportunity for community foundations or for funds to support Latino-led initiatives? And I'll start with Carla.
Sure. Thanks so much for that question, because I think it's really appropriate. And I think we as a community need to all work together to help us to really change the narrative. When you think about, you know, I rattled off a lot of stats earlier, and that's because I always think it's important to ground us in statistics. But you know, for years, if you any research in terms of what are Latino, like what are the biggest dreams, goals, what is it that is top of mind for us? The number one dream for Latinos is home ownership. Which is consistent with many others in this country today. But, you know, just starting there in home ownership, and, you know, I talked about entrepreneurship. We're one of the most entrepreneurial community ever. So if you start there, you know, how do we understand this a very entrepreneurial, hardworking, resilient community? How do we uplift? How do we support, help? You know, all of us are focused on asset building, economic mobility, all of this work. So if we know entrepreneurship is one of our main endeavors, one of our strengths, how do we help provide the resources and the support to ensure, and, you know, building on what Cindy said earlier in terms of, let's make sure that, you know, maybe some were successful entrepreneurs in their own country before they came here, but the rules are a little bit different here. How do you understand the tax system here that is going to be entirely different than what it may have been in Venezuela or in another country? And so, you know, I think really, you know, providing the resources, and know that this is a community that is going to put in the hard work to if you just give a little bit of guidance, point them in the right direction, we're going to get the work done, because we want to get there. And so, you know, earlier Lisa mentioned and others mentioned, you know, this is our future workforce. So how do we make sure that that we have the right education, the right skills to be able to deliver on the needs of the workforce, because overall that, you know, helps to lift our economies overall. So I just think when I take a step back and I think about, you know, we have similar dreams, similar goals in life. Yes, there's a need for a little bit more resources, but again, when you combine that with an extremely hardworking community, an extremely resilient community, it really is, you know, how do we really change the narrative? And that is, again, another reason why I think the stats are important, because this is a community of strength. I always say, you know, for those of us who are Latino on the line, too often I get, even with the best intentions, we have this, you know, kind of the pobrecitos narrative, which is, you know, oh, the poor Latinos, how do we help them? But I think, you know, shifting that mindset and really thinking about this is already a strong community. How do we continue to empower and uplift the community? So much can be accomplished and just helping to change the narrative a little bit and the mindset of how we think about this community.
Thank you. I'll hand it over to Cindy. I'm sorry, my computer froze.
You know, it's funny, it's everything that we've been talking has just been in alignment, you know, with all of our ways of thinking. And when I look at it, it's really bringing to the forefront to our Latin communities that we have the power and the ability to be part of philanthropic spaces. And that as Latinos, we're not just called to be on the receiving end, but also on the giving end. And you don't have to be a millionaire to be on the giving end, to be a part of that space. But when you do contribute, you gain power in the decision-making that's happening in that space. So ultimately, when you have that decision-making power, because now you're part of that contributing into the philanthropic space, that's going to lead a result in supporting and uplifting the Latin-led initiatives in our communities. So it is really looking and challenging Latino leaders in our communities, business owners in our communities, and going out there and talking to the young people. You know, you have power already. You know, let's look at how you can tap into the power that you have to gain power in this space, which will ultimately be able to support then the things that are important to us in our communities.
Thank you, Cindy. You could, in the audience, you can see what amazing conversations we've been able to have over the past several months. And so we're so excited to have been able to put their words into this guide. And so as one last question, as brief as possible, just one sentence or something to each of you who participated with your thoughts for this guide. What's a section of the guide that kind of stands out to you, that resonates with you, that you'd like to draw our audience to today? Carlos, would you like
Sure.
to?
So there's 5 areas of recommendation. I think all 5 are great. But what I like most about the guide, it's a conversation. So when you read through it, you're having a conversation like we're having right now about community foundations. So it's, and I think it, and they also say that this is not like frameworks for how you should be doing things. They're not theories of change. They're not nothing like that. It's really about having conversation with other people in this area. And I think that's what the really nice thing about the guide. It's a conversation.
Thank you. Carla.
Well, I just echo Carlos's feedback as well. I love how it's, and I think that the term guide is so perfect for it, because it's just meant to give you, you know, pointers, things to think about, but really, how do you actually apply this into your own community foundation and your own community? Because we all know that every community has its own dynamics. And every community foundation is slightly different. And so just really almost it's the, best practices, if you will, and some insights and lessons that you could then apply and truly make your own, to make the most impact in each of your respective communities.
Yes, thank you. Cindy?
So for me, what kept coming out was engagement. How are we engaging our Latino community at large, our leadership at large? Are we taking the time? Culturally speaking, you cannot just walk into a meeting and think that you're going to be done in 45 minutes. It's not going to happen. You need to have that time to really get to know people as individuals. Before you can actually start to talk about the organizations and what's happening in the community. So that engagement piece and being aware of who are you including at that table, and not only as within the Latino population, are you including your youth? Are you including your business leaders? Are you including your churches? And yes, I saw one of the questions is it appropriate to meet with pastors of our church? Well, within our community, our churches play a huge role. There are support systems. When crises occurs, those are usually the first places where we go. So yes, if you want to get, the real deal on what's happening out in the community, feel free to talk to your church, the local churches, because they know what's happening in their community. They know what the needs are, and I'm sure they have ideas on how to address those needs. So it's really on that engagement piece, opening the scope on who you're talking to, and really looking at how you're engaging them, being sensitive to the environment, to the culture, and taking that time, and that it's okay to take the time. You don't have to rush it, but taking that time, then you can really do it well.
Thank you. Óscar, please.
I think the guide presents an important opportunity to just deepen your understanding of the Latino community. As Ana Maria said, the Latino community is not a monolith. In our community of Sonoma County, the majority of the Latino community are from Mexico, but we also have Latino communities from El Salvador, Nicaragua. We have Afro-Latinos. And so, not all Latinos are the same. And we have newcomers. We have people who have been here before California was part of the United States. And so this creates an incredible opportunity to know the diversity that exists within the Latino community. And just that, that awareness could create just so much more richness and understanding the vibrancy, the diversity of our communities. And it's different in different parts of the United States. And so I think the lesson here is you can't just put all Latinos in one basket. But this is an opportunity to understand how you can better serve the diversity of our Latino community.
Thank you. And I just, to the point, we are almost at the hour, and I know the conversation, as Cindy mentioned, Latinos, we can't always be limited to the hour. But so we'll take one question from the audience that I saw in the Q&A. And it's making me think also about like the cafecitos right after church. My favorite part, we have a little bit of bread, truly a third home for a lot of Hispanics is the church. So it's a nice memory there. But we have a question from Michael Gale. Is there a role for U.S. community foundations to play, or one some are already planning regarding remittances to further engage with local Latina folks, perhaps partnering with local community foundations in LAC? Whoever wants to.
In Latin America and the Caribbean, I think that.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry, I didn't know the acronym.
And do any of you have thoughts on this? And I'll follow you then on that. No, none of you have worked with that. So Connecting Communities in the Americas is this network of community foundations across the Americas. So we're working with foundations in Brazil, Peru, Chile, Costa Rica, Puerto Rico, Mexico, Colombia, a few other countries, and that is in fact one of the questions that we are thinking about, if there is this role for community foundations in the States or Canada and those in Latin America and the Caribbean to actually connect around supporting community projects in the home countries or the countries of origins. And so feel free to email me on that. I'll put my email in the chat for everybody. It's not an easy question, but it's worth talking about, I think.
I think the only thing I'd add on that is I think it will only reinforce and further bring to light Óscar's point around the diversity of the community, and that, you know, whether, you know, Mexico is very different from Brazil versus a first generation, second, third generation American versus, you know, I'm glad he called out Nicaragua. Nicaragua is from where my family's from. And so all of us have different backgrounds and stories in terms of how we ended up here. But I think that will bring to life, you know, bring the diversity of our community.
And I think something to think about to challenge the foundations when thinking about this question is that as you expose yourself to go to other places and to see the struggles that people are having in our Latin American countries, we can then come back home and understand our communities better, because we're seeing the influx of so many different Latin Americans coming into our local communities and making our communities their new home. So how do we help them? How do we support the newcomers coming in? You know, and one way to really is to educate ourselves by exposing ourselves to the cultures, by going to those native countries and really seeing what's happening on the ground. We can then better support the ones that are now living in our communities.
Yes, and that's been a really rich experience, I think, within the network. So thank you so much to Carla, Cindy, Óscar, Carlos for joining us today, for participating in this guide. We hope that you'll take this with you and work with your teams, preferably on a long-term basis. Don't try to get through it in a week. It's really about ongoing conversations. And so many of the people who we interviewed also said this isn't just for the Latino community. I mean, this can work for any population that we aren't already connected to. Things to think about. So we really thank you for your time today, and wish you all the best for the end of the year and beginning of 2025.
Thank you.